Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I am your host, Rob Z. This platform was created for you, to give you the proof that it's possible for you to break those chains that have been holding you back in your life and to go after your purpose and to find those big breakthroughs that take you to the next level personally and professionally. I've got to thank the sponsor of this platform making this thing possible, the Connected Leaders Academy. Talk about an incredible organization, an incredible mastermind group of leaders, of experts, of authors, of speakers, of coaches who all help each other rise to the top. The Connected Leaders Academy is an amazing place for you to grow. Check out connectedleadersacademy.com and find Jose Escobar on Facebook or LinkedIn. All the details are in the bio for this episode. And today, I love to bring in amazing guests who have great stories of breakthrough and success. Today, Rusty Shields is in the house. Rusty is the enthusiastic owner and chief performance consultant at Develefy Consulting. With over 18 years of experience in leadership development worldwide, with a master's degree in music and a rich history of engaging facilitation, Rusty excels in empowering individuals and teams to achieve their highest potential alongside his continued passion for the performing arts. Rusty, thank you so much for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rob, for having me. I'm really looking forward to today. I think we're going to have a really good time together.
Absolutely, my friend. It's really cool to have you here. And I always start these episodes off with a question, but I want to kind of go into what we're going to frame this episode about first before I dive into that question. So before we started here, you had written me a message. You told me just a little bit of background about you. So you had graduate studies in opera performance. You started working for a rural, family-owned telecommunications company, and it wasn't really what you wanted to do with your life, but it was helping make ends meet to get you to the next gig and to continue on with what your passion was. But after 5 years, a coworker looked at you and asked you the question, "Are you comfortable?" And then they said, "You look it." So that was like the catalyst for you to get unstuck because you realized that you were stuck, right? That conversation you had with a friend caused you to start getting out of the quicksand of your life. How did that quicksand moment change your life?
I can't even begin to describe what that one little question and interaction did for my future. That single question and statement totally transformed everything from that day forward. I can remember the day, I can remember the time, I can remember where we were in that building, I can remember what I was wearing, what she was wearing. Like, it was that vivid to me, and I will always remember that. The quicksand was my day-to-day stuff that I was doing that I thought was just, the day-to-day, like what we do every day. We get stuck sometimes in these ruts, hence the stuck movement that we're kind of talking about, trying to get unstuck from. The quicksand, as I thought I was making moves to get out of the quicksand, when you are in quicksand and start making movements, what usually happens?
You sink deeper.
Right. And so I was not making the correct movements. The correct movements would have been, hey, let's be still and figure out what help I can get. And that's what I needed, was that help from that friend to ask that one simple question, "Are you comfortable?" And that one question, when I answered it, I was like, well, of course I'm comfortable. I started looking at my chair and I was like, yeah, this is a kind of a comfy chair. Like, I worked on getting this chair. I was pretty comfortable. And she kind of slapped me on the head and was like, that's not what I'm talking about, silly. And it kind of just progressed from there, which we can continue to have that conversation. But that quicksand moment was all of the movements I thought that I was making for my career and for the betterment of me were not the right movements that I were making. I was just sinking deeper and deeper.
I had to write that down, what you said there a second ago, the correct movements, because we can make lots of movements. There can be lots of action. And sometimes you need to just take action in a situation to figure out which way to go, right? But you have to then decide, okay, is this the right direction to go in or the wrong direction to go in? So that's really interesting, because the correct movements are everything. Because a lot of people work really hard, but they don't necessarily get where they want to go by working really hard. But you had to make the right decisions. So yeah. I'm going to relate that just because I have a similar moment that happened to me many times. I was in radio broadcasting for 20 years, and when we would record commercials, if we end dated something to be evergreen, the end date was 12/31/37, which was the year 2037. And I used to think to myself, wow, once 2037 ends, we're going to have to get a whole new system. And then I thought, I can't be here in 2037. Like, this can't be where I am. And so you mentioned that one quicksand moment. I had that quicksand moment like on a daily basis of reminding myself, wow, I love this job. Like you said, I was comfortable and I liked what I was doing. I loved what I was doing, but I knew it wasn't where I was supposed to be. And that was a quicksand spot for me. So I can totally relate to that. What started to happen to you after you had that quicksand moment? What was the process for you to get unstuck from that place that led you to where you are today?
It's funny. I basically had to sit and just think about where I currently was. I had to do a self-assessment. I didn't know where I was currently in my quicksand. I didn't know what I was doing. Like, time and energy are our two most limited resources in life that we just don't have enough of. And so we automatically operate in autopilot. Like, just like when we go to McDonald's, as much as we hate to admit, when we go through the drive-thru at McDonald's, why do we do that? It's because we don't have to think about what we're going through this menu to get. Like, we're going to probably get that same value meal that we always get, but we don't have to think about it. We can conserve those energies. And that's where I was at. I was conserving just all the time. I was just like in this just autopilot every single day, doing the same thing every single day. And so I wasn't even aware I was comfortable. That was the funny part. My friend saw that I was comfortable. I thought I was doing great. I thought I was making the moves I needed to. And she says, you're just not going anywhere. She's like, you've got so much more potential. She's like, you're comfortable just doing what you're doing. She says, why are you comfortable? And so that quicksand moment for me was taking that not movement, because again, working against the quicksand makes you deeper. That first movement of stopping and saying, where am I currently at, was just enough for me to say, oh my God, she's right. And so that sitting still for a moment and figuring out what's going to be my next move. And she looked at me the next day and she says, so how was your night? And I said, I didn't do a lot. And that was my sit still for a moment and kind of self-assess. I went home. Spouse was like, what are you doing? I said, I need some time. I said, I've got something on my brain. They were like, okay, that's fine. Take some time. Next day she asks, so how was your night? And I said, I think I'm getting into a new movement pattern here. And she said, you're not getting any younger. And that's another verbatim thing that she said to me the next day. And my eyes got this big around. And at that age that I was at, I think let's see, how long ago was that? I would have been probably in my mid 30s when she asked me that. And I was like, what do you mean you're not getting any younger? I'm in my mid 30s. I'm not nearing that age that you should be asking me or telling me that kind of statement. But it was true. She basically was saying, get off your butt and do something, about it. And so from then on, it was, okay, what's going to be my next move? And I knew where I was at, it just wasn't going to be it. And so from then on, I just made the conscious decision. I was like, okay, here's what I'm doing. I put in my 2 weeks notice that day. It literally was that day. Didn't necessarily know where I was going next. I just knew I had to make a different move. And from that day forward, it was the targeted, conscious decisions that I started making for myself and not for others, or allowing others to make those decisions for me, that really allowed me to decide for the future. Like, it was what I called a selfish future. Sometimes we have to be selfish for the future. We can be unselfish in the present, selfish for the future. And that's what I needed to do, was to be more selfish for the future for me. And that's when I started making those decisions of, this is where I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put myself in these situations. I'm going to introduce myself to these people. I'm going to sacrifice these hours because I know that that's what needs to happen to get to those movements I want to make next.
That's really good, man. I'm just taking some notes here. Selfish for the future. That's really good. And I want to touch on this because you kind of went over this real quickly, but this is huge. The boldness to put in a 2 weeks notice without a plan, because you hear two different worlds of thought, right? One is you better plan before you leave because you don't want to just leave and be floundering out there in the middle of the ocean, not knowing what the heck you're going to do. But the other one is like, you got to act now. We got to figure this thing out. We got to move. What gave you the boldness to put a 2 weeks notice in without a plan of like, where am I going to go next?
So I remember in high school, when you're when you're a senior, you have those meetings with your senior class, and they're like, "This is going to be our color. This is going to be our tree. This is going to be our quote for our class." Well, our quote, I actually came up with the quote for our class because it's a quote that my mother had always told me as a kid, and her quote to me, and she, it wasn't her quote. She was anonymous, so we could never figure out who eventually wrote the quote. But the quote basically says, "Plan as if you'll live forever, live as if you'll die tomorrow." And
Mm.
like I lived my whole life with that. She basically, because she's like, "You're not promised tomorrow." That's the whole thing. So when you decide to do something, do it. Right. And so that's what just I've always lived my life by. And I am a positivity person. And I have always said, you do good for others, it will come back to you. And, whatever higher power anybody believes in, whatever that may be, whatever it is, if you believe in something, something's going to reward you in a way for all of the effort that you put in. And so again, a lot of uncertainty when I made that decision, but I just knew for me, if I was going to continue to be in a quicksand, it was going to eat me up. And
Hmm.
so if I continue to just wait, what opportunities are out there that someone else is going to get before I get? And so that's what I had to tell myself is I've got enough people in my current network and in my current corner and in my room that I've built that I'm going to be fine. If I have to go flip burgers long enough to get me to where I need to go to feed the dream, then I'll do it. And it was just that conscious decision to take the step, because if you continue to wait for someone else to usher you through that step, you're going to be behind.
Very true, man. You weren't sitting on the fence. You put both feet in. You weren't sitting in that place of like, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this will work out. And that's like that conscious decision you have to make to really fully buy into the dream, the vision, what you're going to go after. And like you said, you were going to do anything to make that happen. If you had to go flip burgers and make it happen, you were going to make it happen. I want to make sure I got this quote right because I had to write it down. Plan as if you'll live forever. Live as if you'll die tomorrow. Is that right?
Correct.
That is really, really good. Wise woman, your grandma.
Yeah, it was
That,
my mother. It was
oh,
my mother.
I'm sorry, your
Yep.
mother. Okay,
Yep.
wise woman, your mother. Then your
Yes.
grandmother must have been
Yes.
too, if she
Yes,
had
she
you up.
was. Yes, she was. That's right. Exactly. Wise
And
women I grew up with.
and so, I want to just step back for a minute too and talk about this sit and think concept. You went and you sat that night, and the quicksand analogy is so good because in quicksand, which is kind of funny, right? When we were kids, we thought quicksand was going to be a big deal. But it's really not. There really is no quicksand anywhere. We seem to be okay. But the concept of it, the more you flail and just do random activities in quicksand, the faster you're going to sink. But when you stop and take a moment and think about it, you can pause in that place to intelligently get yourself out of that place. And I love the thought in life too, right? There's no standing still. If you're standing still, you're falling backward. So as you stood still in that place, you had to like recalibrate because you knew that you were slipping backward and you had to recalibrate, make a new decision to climb yourself out of that place. And I find that to be so powerful. That quicksand analogy is
Mhm.
really so, so good. When you're working with people these days and you've gone through this, you've made this mess your message in your life. What is one of the biggest pieces of advice you give to somebody when they know they're heading in the wrong direction? They can see themselves, they're not where they need to be, they're not where they want to be, and they want to make that change. What are some of the beginning steps? Do you go back to what you did for yourself, or what are the beginning things you advise them to do?
The biggest thing that I always ask people right out of the gate is, why are you where you're at right now? So that's why there has to be a reason why you're currently in the current state you are, whether it's a state, whether it's a location, whether it's a trend, whether it's a holding pattern, whatever. What's the why right now?
Mm,
Once they figure out their why, I then have to pose another question to them. Okay, this is the current state. What's the future? Well, what do you want the future to be? If money was not an issue, if getting to that future was not an issue, what would that future be? You have to have an idea of what you want that dream home to look like, right? I could
mhm,
probably ask you right now, if you could have your dream home, what would it look like? And you could probably describe it in detail. Like if you had that dream yacht that you wanted, or you had this dream, like if money was not an issue, we all have an idea of what we want the future to look like. And if we don't, then we're stuck. And
mm,
that's that quicksand. If we don't have an idea, then we are so bogged down by the mire of what's going on in life that maybe our eyes are already below the quicksand, right? And so
very
we're
true.
at a state. where we are like, it's almost the point of no return if we're not careful. So it's asking, what does that future look like? Okay, we've got a current state, we've got a future state. Now it just comes to, okay, are you going to make the conscious decision to now say, now let's define the steps? Because I can't define those steps for you. Like, I can't tell you, do this, 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 and this, and you're going to get to that future. You have to define that for yourself, because what motivation do you have if someone else defines that for you? So motivation's a two-way street. It's extrinsic, it's intrinsic motivation. You've got to know what both of them are. If I were to tell you, Rob, go do this, 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 and this, are you going to have the motivation to complete those steps? They didn't come from you. You don't have any motivation to complete them. It's almost like me being a boss to you, saying, hey, I need you to complete this task, this task, this task. I'm not going to be a boss to you. I want to be a connection for you to be able to support you if needed. I'm going to be more of that supporter. You're going to have to figure it out, and I'll be there every step along the way. But it's going to be, let's figure out current state, future state steps to get there, but it's going to have to come from you.
Right. And most of the time in our life, we live from an extrinsic kind of point of view, as we're always like chasing after things outside of us, but you're talking intrinsic. What, pausing, taking that time, and that's the real compass, right? When you find that compass, that intrinsic part of you, like, where am I satisfied? Where am I happy? Where am I using my strengths? Where do I find joy in what I'm doing? And I'm sure this is what you do when you're working with businesses. Because what I also do is, it's helping the leaders in the business help the employees in the business find their strengths and then position them in a spot to work from their strengths. If they can work from their strengths, then they're going to be much more satisfied and joyful in what they're doing. And it's such a simple tweak, but it's something that can go by the wayside when things are moving so quickly. How did you know that this was your spot? Right, you took your pause, you took your 2-week break, you put your 2-week notice in, you sat with yourself and figured this out, leading you to where you are right now. What was it about you that you knew this is exactly what you were supposed to be doing with your life? Was there a certain clue that popped up along the way that you were like, oh, shoot, I'm heading in the right direction here? Did you have a moment like that?
That's a very good question. And what's funny about all of that is I had it in my entire life that everything that I was supposed to be doing was supposed to be in music. So after doing all my performing and all my degrees in music, and I told myself, I'm in this organization teaching and training people. I was like, well, this is just a means to the end to me be able to be that next Pavarotti on the stage. But then when I left the organization that I was with and put in that 2 weeks notice, and I was like, what am I going to do now? I met with that person again, that friend that basically said, are you comfortable? And I said, okay, you got me in this mess. I called it a mess at the time because I was like, okay, a little uncertainty here. And she knew I was joshing with her. But I said, okay, if you saw me as comfortable, what do you see as what I should be doing? And she's like, the way that you connect with the people in your classes when you trained them at our organization, people still, 2 weeks after you've left this organization, still talk about the classes that you taught. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, what are they saying? They said, well, they walked into a room to learn something new and something very transactional, and you expect them to walk away with a changed behavior. People automatically go into those situations with a certain amount of anxiety that we're trying to change something in their life. And before you were in the first 5 minutes, you had them all sharing about their experiences and comfortable enough where they felt psychological safety enough to share anything that you wanted them to share. She says, not everybody can do that. People, after leaving your class, were applying exactly on the job what you wanted them to do. They didn't have to try. So the 30, 60, and 90-day follow-up was happening without even trying. So she's like, you've got a way of connecting with people that is special. And she said, however you do that is what you should continue to do. I said, okay. So then I, in my mind, was starting to make the correlation. Where did that come from? Well, then I went back to my music. So that's where it all started for me. I knew that I can connect with people through music. Music is a universal language. In any language, no matter what it is, you can just play a sound, and if it has a certain emotion attached to it, no matter what language you speak, no matter where you are in the world, you can hear it, and you're probably going to share that same emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So that part of my creative brain then transferred into when I talk to people in general. Like I'm going to come at that kind of connection where I'm going to try to find a way to make a connection no matter what we're talking about, what we're doing. I'm going to be able to somehow have a connection with you to where we can put all of our walls aside, put those armors down, and let's just be people. And that's where I think I realized in that conversation with her that I can put my creative, my musical together with me wanting to just be with people and reach whatever goal they want to reach. Are we having a session on growth? Are we just having a conversation because you're stuck, like we're doing here, having a conversation about being stuck? Are you just wanting to, you're struggling with something in your family and you don't have anybody else to talk to? Okay, let's just talk about it. Let's grab a drink. Let's go do something. So to me, it was that moment of realizing that I can connect with people through music background into today's whatever X is.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much, man. That's so good, Rusty, because oftentimes our gifts have to be pointed out to us, right? Because they come so natural to us that we don't know that it's a gift. And somebody has to like bring that out of us. So you said you had somebody in your life who brought that out to you, like this is a gift of yours. You should go in that direction. That is so powerful. And if we all think back, there's somebody in our life who's given us clues to that gift, right? And it's pushed us in that direction. So I absolutely love that. That is so powerful. Pay attention to those moments. So real quick, we're going to shout out to the sponsor of the Connected Leaders Academy. When we jump back in here in 60 seconds, we're going to talk about how to be very careful about who you allow in your room, what that meant for your life, and then how can we make sure we have the right people in our room with us so we can change our lives in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JASCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
All right, Rusty. So the right people in the room will change your entire life, and being careful about who you allow in your room is so important. What has this meant for you in your life, and how can people change who's in their room?
So it's so interesting you bring that specific thing up, and I'm glad we're talking about this because I belong to a referral marketing program called BNI, Business Network International.
Same here.
The founder, Dr. Ivan Meisner, recently wrote a second edition of a book between him and Stuart Emery called Who's in Your Room. I always had the idea that, okay, of course we have this proverbial subconscious room that we invite people into, right? And I always knew that existed, but not to the extent that they took it. And when I read his book, and I've got it here, so Who's in Your Room, second edition, plug there for you, life-changing for me. Because the whole idea of their room that they're talking about is that we have that room, but the different feature about this room that we're talking about within this book is that it's only got a one-way door. So those that you invite in can't ever leave. In my mind, I was like, okay, I can always take somebody out of my life if I need to. Like if they are not a good fit, I can just remove them. But then I got challenged by, okay, while they are in your room, what do they always leave with you? So if you remove them out of their life, what did they leave with you though? Those memories that imprinted on your brain, those experiences, especially the one that caused the termination of that relationship, will always be there. Right? So essentially, they don't leave the room. You just have to put them in a different corner. So this is where I begin to challenge myself. Okay, so if I have to be a little more careful because they're going to stay in my room, I need to only let people in the room that have the same values that I do. Right? So those values, I have to define what those values are. Like there are hundreds upon hundreds of values out there, but I had to make sure I knew what my values were first and live those values so I can look at the people that are on my porch and say whether or not they can come in my room. So the idea and the premise in the book is that you've got a doorkeeper and a concierge. The doorkeeper is trained on your values, and that person says, you can't come in. Oh, you can come on in. Nope, you can't come in. And then they get turned around. Concierge puts them where they belong in the room. Do I want them in my inner circle close enough to where I can lean on them and I'm getting so much from them? They're adding to my life instead of subtracting by my life to my life. Then they're going to be in close proximity. Or I may need them in my life, but I need them at a little bit further arm's reach. They're going to be in a different proximity in the room, but I get to build my room. So it was very transformational to me to have to challenge myself to say, okay, am I going to let this person in my room? What if I'm challenged by a family member? Do I have to let that family member in the room? Or do I put them in a lockbox, want that they've done something to where I don't want them close by anymore? So the whole idea of this room and the people that we allow into it, the quality of our life is dependent on the people in our room. That statement to me, like that one sentence in the book that they wrote, that sentence jumps out at me over and over every time I think about it. The quality of our life is dependent on the people in our room. So that translates to exactly what we're talking about. The quality of the life we're trying to create is dependent on who all we've allowed in our room. Like if it wasn't for my friend that I allowed in that room, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I can't wait to share this link with her. I'm hoping she may be watching live, but I can't wait to share this with her and say, you are the person I'm talking about in this video. And so I can't wait to thank and say thank you for this and show the appreciation for her. I'm glad that she's in my room. She's one that I keep in close proximity all the time. So I had to then, once I read this book, identify, okay, who's currently in my room and where do I need to put them? What is my current state of the room? And then from here, I've been able to say, okay, these are the people that are in my room. These are the people that I'm going to allow in my room. Here are my 5 values. I've chosen 5 out of the list of hundreds of values that are out there. So that way they're easy to be recited. They're on a Post-it note by my computer. They're always there reminding me of what my values are. So I can leave each day when I leave the house, when I jump on a meeting, when I do this, when I go to a networking event, it's always at forefront of mind. This person, are they coming in my room or are they not coming in my room? Because I want my dream room, my future, my valued room. I want the people in my room to be people that belong there.
Mm-hmm. Really good stuff. Talking about values, right? So a lot of people don't know what their values are. A lot of people have maybe gone over values and looked at a list and been like, oh, here are things that I value, but haven't really taken that time to maybe write them down and put them by their computer and to live their life by those values and, kind of vetting people by putting them up to your values. Is that how you use that? So you have your values, you have 5 that you use, you keep them at the forefront of your mind. So when you're meeting somebody or you're in a situation, you're kind of like weighing them against, do these match my values? Is that something you like consciously do on a regular basis?
It's something I actually have learned to subconsciously do. I had to consciously make the decision. Now, it's not from a judging that person point of view. Everybody brings something to the table, right? I just have to decide whether or not they are going to add to my life or subtract from it. That doesn't mean that I can't have connections with them. But I'm going to define whether or not I let them in my room. I can still have a connection with somebody and them not be in my room, right? I can monitor that connection a little differently, right? So it's not from a judging perspective. I want to make sure that that's clear. Like I am not judging people to say whether or not that they are worthy of being that person of who they are. I just have to make decisions whether or not they're going to be in my room or out my room. That connection is going to be different. But when it comes to values, this is where I challenge everybody to listening to write down every value you can think of. It can be 20, 40, whatever it may be. Like, I don't want you to just think of 5 and write them down. You can even Google what are values, a list of values, and get that list of values. And here's the hard part. I want you to narrow that list down to 10. Start with 10. And how are you saying, how can you do that? Well, the way that I do it, when you go to the eye doctor and you get that eye test, they've got that thing over the eye and they're telling you, they cover one up and say, okay, which one looks better? This one or this one? They flip that little thing. Okay, now is 2 better or 3 better? right? So do the same thing with your values. Look at the first value on the list and the second value and say, okay, of these two, which one is more important or rings more true right now? You pick that one, mark the other one off. Then take that value that you chose down to the next one below it and say, okay, which value is more resonant with you right now, this one or this one, until you can get that whittled down to 10. And then I tell people to don't go right into getting to 5. Let those 10 resonate with you for a couple of days and find out, are those 10 the 10 that are still resonating? Because you're going to come into contact with people daily, new people every day in your life, and find out, are these values something that you hold to be your values? Then come back to that conversation in your mind with you and say, okay, now of these 10, let me do my eye test again and get this down to 5. And those are the 5 that really, and I have them on Post-it note right here by my computer all the time. And so those values are the ones that I hold true, and those are the ones that I always have felt are the ones that speak to me.
That's really good. And, I'm thinking, as you're talking about that, when I've been working with people on their values and going through this, people will say, like, well, these things all seem to mean the same thing. Like, there's a bunch of values that kind of like fit together, right? It's like overlapping definitions. And the way I've boiled it down for myself is, well, some of these, and I wish I could think of specific examples right now, but some of these values, they seem to have like overlapping definitions, but one stands out that you could kind of like take these 4 values and they would fit inside of this one for you. And that one value is like the main one that kind of holds these sub values inside of it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, saying it out loud, but it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it does. It totally does.
So I tell people that too, is like, which one stands out as like you said, boil it down to 10. And could you like take these 4 and put them inside of this other one, because this other value holds so much weight for you? Like for me, I didn't realize simplicity is a huge value of mine. Mm-hmm. And I would wonder why. Why do I get so frustrated when things get complicated? Why do I feel so out of whack when things get complicated? And I had to realize, it's simplify. I need to simplify things, but I never took the time to recognize that as a value of mine, to really put effort into my life to simplifying things. I just thought like, well, I just have to deal with the fact that I can't handle complex things. No, I was looking at the negative instead of the positive. I just need to go towards simplification. So that's really important, and that's really, really good.
It's funny you bring up the negative, because we're part of the value conversation you need to have is, if you can't figure out what your values are, start with what are your deal breakers and your deal makers. That should help drive your values. So to me, the negatives, what you're going to, those are almost like your deal breakers. Like for people that possess these values, it's not a part of it. Those are your deal breakers. Now, on the flip side of that, you should automatically be able to find the opposite of your deal breakers or your deal makers. Your deal makers should drive your values.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What's a deal breaker for you? I'm curious.
Negativity. That is right out of the gate. That's one of the top of my list. I do not deal well with people that are negative all the time. Like, I need positivity in my life. So one of my 5 values is positivity. So people have to possess positivity, or you don't belong in my room.
Yeah, and that can be misconstrued sometimes, because sometimes you need to look at things in a certain light, but it doesn't mean you have to be negative about them. You have to be objective and honest about them, but you don't need to be negative about them.
Right.
That's incredibly important. So when we're talking about your room, it seems, this has been my experience, that as I grew personally, people naturally left my life and new people naturally came into my life. And as I went back and did like a life review of maybe the past 7 years of my life, my circle completely changed. But if I had to be honest, it wasn't fully intentional. Have you experienced this in your life? Like, as you grow, people naturally come to you, people naturally leave your circle. And have you found like an intentionality to that for yourself, or have you found that naturally happening for you?
For me, it was a natural thing. So when I decided to live Rusty's life and be Rusty all the time and not try to do the Jekyll and Hyde thing, when I was Rusty and transparent Rusty all the time, it naturally happened. People would naturally want to be a part of Rusty and want to be around Rusty. The people that decided Rusty's too much. He's just too happy all the time. He's just too positive all the time. Like sometimes that's not for people. So they can come and go as they please. But it's when I decided to consciously be myself all the time is when that just it's happened naturally. And that's what I would rather, because I don't want to have to try. I don't want to have to try to bring people in. I want them to naturally feel like that connection is going to be there. I don't want it to be forced. So you being yourself all the time, that's what's going to just flock people to you or push them away, one of the two.
So the gigantic question is, how do you become more of Rusty? How do I become more of Rob? Because this is such a great subject, man. This has been like I wrote a chapter in an anthology about this. Like, I feel like I had this version inside of me that I couldn't get out. And the more I get that version of the true me out, the better things get. The more I bring those people to me, the more other people leave. How did you start to actualize who Rusty actually is, and how did you start being yourself?
So to me, it's coming full circle where we started today, like that quicksand moment. I had to quit moving. Once I realized and was quit being the busybody, Rusty, and trying to please others and trying to force out and make those movements that were making me go deeper. Once I finally decided to quit doing stuff for others and do for myself and be that selfish future that I talked about, is when I finally started to find myself. I had to learn how to say no without being a jerk. I had to learn to do things for me and say, well, no, I'm not doing this because it's going to either weigh me down. It's going to be something I don't believe in. It's going to take away from my life. It's when I made those decisions to start saying no and set boundaries, I found peace. Part of finding peace is finding yourself, doing the things you enjoy, being the person you want to be, changing the world how you want to change the world. And that was a part of it for me, was to quit. And that, to me, that even helped me sleep at night. Like my spouse and I get in arguments. They don't sleep well. Like mine just runs and runs and runs at night. I can be asleep before my head hits the pillow. I can be like midstream down to the pillow and I'll be out mid-sentence sometimes. And they're like, how can you do that? It's like, I'm going to quit worrying about the things that I can't control. I'm not going to worry about anybody else but me. I'm only going to worry about what I can control. Anything else is not worth the energy. And that helped me to begin to realize who I am, what I want to do, who I want to be, and to quit worrying about everybody else. Quit worrying about the mess. And we don't want to worry about the mess anymore.
Yeah. That's a place of peace. It sounds like you really found with being yourself. I love that. That is so good. This has been such a great conversation, Rusty. I really value all of this because this is such powerful information. And what I love about life is like this. It's the simple things. Mm-hmm. It's God created things to be simple, like not complicated. So that's when I go back to this word simplicity for me. It's like, oh man, is this too complicated? Then I need to avoid it. It depends. Sometimes good things you have to really soak in and learn a complex idea. But when it boils down to life, it's the simple things in life that are the truest. It's like cliches. Cliches are simple sayings. They're cliches because they're true and they've been around for thousands of years, and so they've stuck. This has just been so valuable, man. I want to ask you one question here at the end. If you could sum up your entire journey in one word, what would that word be, and why?
I would say fullest. The word is fullest. And because you just said one word and I couldn't do a phrase, it's gonna.
Well, that's where the why comes in.
Right. So again, it's gonna be living life to the fullest. Like you can't. You just got to live for you. Like to me, that's the whole gist of everything. Words that were popping in my head were transparency and empathy and connection. Like those are just words. Like impact. Those are just words for me every day. Focus, action, manifestation. Like those are just words for me. But if I had to think about it, it's full. I want to be full of life. I want to be full of connection. So fullest, I want the cup to be overfloweth is what I would like to have, and that's what I'm working on filling up every day. That's my thing. I'm waking up every day, hopefully having a cup that's already overflowing. If not, what can I do this morning to fill it up?
Yeah, man. Love that so much. So if people want to find you, they can check out Develefy.com. That's DEVELEFY.com. On LinkedIn, Rusty-Shields. On Facebook, Develefy Consulting. make sure you contact Rusty, say hi to him, connect with him. Man, this has been such a powerful conversation. I'm very grateful and thankful for you coming on here and sharing wisdom with us. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
I first off just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of the opportunity. This has been a wonderful conversation. It's kind of a dreary day here in Indiana, and I couldn't tell because I feel all the sunlight coming in the room, and it's not even sunny outside. So this helped add to my day. So thank you for being a part of my room, Rob. And if I just had to leave with one thing, and I think to me, it's going to be finding that person today, maybe that you can help get out of the quicksand. And that's my big thing. I want to and ask somebody, are you comfortable? Or look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you comfortable? Because that was a life-changing question for me.
The better the questions we ask in life, the better the answers, the bigger the breakthroughs. I say it every episode. It's so true. So yeah, ask somebody that question that's close to you in your life. Rusty, thank you so much for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
Thank you for having me.